Please take your seat. Hello, my name is Joseph Durbin, and I am one of the music teachers here at Pontiac Township High School, as well as the chairperson of the Distinguished Alumni Award Committee. We've been doing this now for, I believe it's 8 years, and one of the reasons we started the award was because we wanted to put in front of you, the current student body, alumni of this institution, the school, who have done, by all accounts, very well in their lives. Not to say that they didn't have struggles and challenges, which you may hear about today, but to put them in front of you and say, these people sat, I used to be able to say the same chairs, but I can't anymore, who walked the same halls, who walked through the same lunch line, who had the same lockers, who sat in the same classes. There are two exceptions to that. There are two individuals, Mr. Rodino and Mr. Youst, who went to the old high school, that was down in Indiana. But to have them in front of you to give you some pointers, some advice, things that they wish they maybe could have done again, things that went well for them when they were here, so that it might inspire you to take and make the most of your opportunities in high school. Today we will hear from individuals who have excelled in their own fields in study and in their own personal lives. A hard path at times for sure, but also a path of work, pride, and a stick-to-itness that we can all aspire to, myself included. This is not to say that each person who will speak today has not faced adversity, but they found a way through that adversity through grit, perseverance, and I'm sure a little help along the way. Our first award recipient is a posthumous one. That means that this individual has passed away, and this is for Mr. Joseph Youst. He graduated in 1942, and because I'm a music teacher, I make a habit of saying what the #1 song was the year they graduated, and so in 1942, the #1 song was White Christmas by Bing Crosby. That's what that was. Thank you. Mr. Youst graduated in 1942 and grew up in Pontiac as one of 8 children. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy upon graduation and served in the Pacific throughout World War II. He took advantage of the GI Bill to graduate from Knox College and later received a master's degree from Northern Illinois University. He was on the safety patrol while a student at St. Mary's Catholic School and awarded a trip to Washington, D.C. after he was recognized for safeguarding a student. He had a distinguished career as an educator, coach, and naturalist, teaching in El Paso High School. He met his wife, Mary, coaching in Polo, Illinois. His polo football team won a state championship. He was awarded Teacher of the Year at Maine West High School before returning to Pontiac as principal of Pontiac Junior High, and later St. Mary's Catholic School. In 1981, the Rotary Club named him Citizen of the Year, and in 1999, he received the Congressional Points of Light Award for his tireless dedication to nature's beauty. As host of the radio show The Nature of Things, Joe shared his passion for nature. He was devoted to his work at the Humiston Woods and was proud to have the Joseph K. Youst Education Center named for him. We're now going to welcome to the stage 2 of Mr. Youst's daughters to speak on his behalf, Susie and Debbie Youst. Let's give them a round of applause.
So hi, I'm Debbie Youst, and I'm one of Joe Youst's 4 daughters, and one of the 2 daughters who became a teacher. I taught kindergarten and preschool, and was an administrator in the Chicago Public Schools. My sister Susie was a special ed teacher and a dance therapist. For that reason, our costume supervisor, union president sister thought we were the ones that should do the speaking today here. We thought of regaling you with a nursery rhyme rewritten with lyrics praising our Father, accompanied by an interpretive dance. However, that may have been more horrifying than inspiring. Joe Youst was a Pontiac boy who worked hard. He took advantage of educational opportunities that came his way. He followed his passions. He loved his family. Sorry, I got verklempt. He loved his family, his friends, and his community. which he demonstrated with his actions. As the dedication of Humiston Woods Joseph K. Yachts Education Center, I describe my dad as a scientist with the soul of a poet. He was a scientist in that he taught geology, he collected fossils, he reclaimed Humiston Wood farmland as a native prairie, conceived and nurtured the transformation of Humiston Woods, and hosted the Nature of Things radio show. He delighted in the natural world and his involvement with those who he encountered on the way. He inspired several of his students to become geologists. In his eulogy, my brother Joe said that he loved that his friends loved our father. This is a line that I hold very dear. I love that you are honoring my father. He would be delighted with this recognition today, and he would be ever so much better at motivating you as you begin your school year.
Our next award recipient today is Mr. Chris Kutzer. Like I said, in 1991, the top song of that year was "Everything I Do It For You" by Bryan Adams. You know that? Sorry. Chris was an active student athlete, graduating from PTHS in 1991, and then earning his degree in finance from the University of Illinois in 1995. While continuing to work, Chris earned his MBA in Strategy and Finance from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business in 2002. Professionally, Chris joined Motorola in 1995, serving in various finance and executive roles spanning over 20 years, leading financial operations of billion-dollar business units, global venture capital investing, and managing Motorola's investor relations team, which covers the New York Stock Exchange and relationships with institutional investors around the world. During this time, Chris also served as a board advisor to the Hooft Technology and Management Program at the University of Illinois and a board director to a privately held technology company headquartered in Central Illinois. In 2019, Chris was appointed as Chief Financial Officer and Board Director of Kin & Carta, a global digital technology company listed on the London Stock Exchange. In 2022, Chris was named Kin & Carta's Chief Operations Officer, expanding his role to oversee global operations. Chris, his wife Sally, also a PTHS graduate, and their 3 children reside in suburban Chicago and are active community volunteers. Let's all welcome Mr. Kutzer to the stage.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Welcome back to first day of school, I believe, right? It is an honor to be here today. We were talking beforehand, what a great community Pontiac was. We'll all speak about the small town. Mr. Yopst was my first principal at St. Mary's School. Any St. Mary Saints in the house out there? I hope. He was a good man, that is for sure, and I'm here with a former classmate, Tim, and other people. My 7th grade teacher also nominated, so what an honor to be here. I do want to start and share a quick story and a little advice based off of my experience. So it was the summer of 1987. I don't know what the top song was in 87. I was about to enter 8th grade, and it was my only job that summer. All I had to do was paint a relatively small white picket fence. That was it. But my work ethic at the time, well, it pretty much sucked. That's the right word for it. If it had something to do with sports, I was interested. If not, I was fairly uninterested at that time. So the point being, it took me all summer long to paint that little white picket fence. I was unmotivated at the time. Now, my own lack of motivation at the time really isn't an exaggeration. I was so lazy, my own mother said later in life, "Christopher, I used to tell your dad that he was going to have to help find you a job because who would ever hire you?" That's my own mother. Now, she was a fantastic mom and a very supportive parent, but she was right about me at the time. Luckily, I would soon outgrow this phase. I would soon outgrow this phase because I cared. And I soon grew to be motivated at whatever was in front of me. And that motivation gave me some options. Those options included attending the college of my choice, landing a job with a global tech company, and eventually raising a family and allowing us to give back to the community. That was also important motivation later in life. Back to my childhood here in Pontiac. I am blessed with two parents who love me unconditionally. They taught me to work hard, they taught me to be grateful, and be a good teammate in everything that I do. And I was lucky to grow up in this community that also reinforced those values. Now, there we go. I get it. A lot of you in the room today probably don't appreciate your hometown just yet. But there's a reason there's so many songs about your hometown or the good old days that harken back to growing up in a place like Pontiac. So you will soon appreciate it if you don't yet. Pontiac is a good community in the purest sense. It's not perfect, but on a relative basis, it does provide a foundation that allows you to thrive and grow, and is a supportive community that supports its students, you. And from my perspective, Pontiac was everything that I knew. I had good friends here, some great times, and I eventually met my wife, would marry her from Pontiac as well, and I became comfortable. And that was a good thing, but comfort can also inhibit growth and progress sometimes. And fortunately, I was just bold enough to open my mind and become comfortable with being uncomfortable. So, remember, when I grew up and graduated from Pontiac, it was pre-internet, pre-cell phone. I was mostly unaware of the world around me. Then I went to the University of Illinois. It helped broaden my perspective, led to a job, and that job sent me to China, Japan, Europe, all over the world. And those places that I visited usually looked nothing like Pontiac, but I soon learned that people all over the world had more in common with me than differences to me, and thus the same for you sitting there as well. Moving from Pontiac to my new home in Chicagoland was also an adjustment. It was all change, but it was exciting and it was motivating. And while it was a little bit uncomfortable, the foundation I had here in Pontiac gave me the confidence to make that leap and make the change that was right for me at the time. The one thing that I did not change, however, or at least I hope I didn't change, is my small town roots, my humble, hungry approach to life. And that was some of the values that I learned here in Pontiac. So my advice to you take a chance. Use your own motivation for whatever drives you. You are as prepared as any teenager in the world. So take that leap, act on your motivation to give yourself options, work for your grades, take that part-time job, finish your own little white picket fence, but think big, because here in Pontiac is as good of a foundation as there is in any country of the world that I visited. Do it with energy, do it with enthusiasm, and embrace the sometimes uncomfortableness that comes with change and growth. So let me add a bit of advice. These are the 4 H's that have served me well, and I believe make a great teammate in school, in work, or in life. First, be hungry. That is, be eager and positive. Are you an energy giver or an energy taker when you join the team? We almost all of us are capable of giving more. So seek out more projects, find more ways to help, reach out to more people to make connections, because it almost always comes back to help you. Hustle. You gotta show it. In fact, go the extra mile and do it with a smile. Early in my career, I knew it was going to be foolish to think I was the smartest person in the room all the time, because I wasn't. But the one thing I could control is I would never be outworked at something that I cared about. Back to motivation, right? Be humble. Nobody likes a jerk. Stay grounded. And on a related note, a little self-doubt can be a good motivator. We all have self-doubts. That's okay. Use those doubts to motivate yourself to be over-prepared for what you're looking to do. And finally, honesty. Be honest with yourself about what your priorities are. about your priorities or your goals, I think most of us actually want a lot of the same things. And it's not money or fame. It's a fulfilling life of experiences. Now, I get it. That's pretty fluffy, and you're probably skeptical, right? You'd rather have the fame and fortune. I get it. But let me ask you a question. Would you change places right now with the richest people in the world? Would you do that today? No. Right, good answer. Their average age is 70 years old. So think about the life experience you would miss. Think of the friendships, the laughter, the good times and the bad that make life worth living. But maybe the most interesting part is I'm fairly certain they would trade places with you if they could. Because you have what they will never again have. You all have your youth still. You have a lifetime of experiences yet to live, an unbound opportunity to create your own good luck with what motivates you. So finally, let me end with this. I believe gratitude is the key. Went ahead, there we go. I think gratitude is the key to a fulfilling life. Not fame or fortune, but gratitude. In fact, studies continually show that having a grateful outlook not only is good for your emotional health and good for your relationships, it's actually good for your physical health. And I am truly grateful for the foundation Pontiac and PTHS gave me to enable me to get after what I was motivated for later in life. So, my challenge to you, use your own PTHS and your Pontiac Community Foundation. Go find someone or something to be grateful for. Lean into positive change, even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. Hustle and create your own opportunities, be a great teammate, and stay humble while you do it. Thank you for the nomination, and good luck to you.
Our third award recipient today is Mr. Greg Monabat. He graduated PTHS in 1988. The #1 song of that year was Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson. Mr. Monabat is an executive with 3 decades of experience on Wall Street and corporate management. Greg attended St. Mary's and PTHS and graduated magna cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School, where he was an all-Ivy League as a track sprinter. Greg had a distinguished financial career trading emerging country debt in Latin America, Asia, and Eastern Europe. He was a managing director at Cantor Fitzgerald and headed trading desks at Standard Bank, Dresdner Bank, and Smith Barney. He frequently produced record trading revenues and was recognized as an innovator in derivatives trading. Greg began his career at Merrill Lynch in New York and Hong Kong. Greg later was a deal maker in private investment and shepherded several companies in new industries. As CFO at Ecogen Biosciences, he led a successful exit during the COVID pandemic. He was CEO of an Asian-based cryptocurrency project with worldwide travel alliances. Greg was instrumental in assembling the team for an AI-driven monitoring platform for mobility diseases. Since 2005, Greg has served as an assistant commissioner of Westside Soccer League, one of the nation's largest youth soccer programs. Greg is married to Janet and has 3 children, and they live in New York City. Let's welcome Mr. Monabat to the stage.
I have to lower it after Chris spoke. First of all, it's an honor to be here, and I'm so glad to be back in Pontiac and see so many familiar faces. Thanks for giving me the time today, and I hope I can impart some lessons on my experience. And I wrote this speech specifically thinking, if I was 16 years old, what would I want to hear someone telling me? So I hope you can find some of my stories entertaining and learn something. I came to Pontiac when I was 6 years old. I attended St. Mary's School in PTHS, and I think my background is a lot like your background here. So when I was young, I was obsessed with riding bikes, shooting my BB gun. There used to be Indian Skate Land, which was a roller rink. Later, when I got my driver's license, we used to drive around Hardee's, which was on the corner where I think Cafe something is there now, but we would just drive around, and I would be thinking to myself, gosh, Is there anything more exciting to do? And I didn't, and my kids live in New York City, they say the same thing, so I think it's sort of a universal experience. Anyway, in high school I did track, debate, and I was involved in Kiwanis Key Club. But I really loved games growing up. I loved playing chess, I loved Monopoly, Sorry, any of those games, I really tried to figure this out. So that was kind of like what motivated me. Can we play some kind of game? I went to UPenn later, as you saw, I ran track. And then later, so I used my finance degree to trade emerging market debt. What is that? I used to travel to these exotic countries. I would go to Russia, South Africa, Brazil, when it was more exotic, and we would trade hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in their debt obligations, which sounds esoteric, but in any case, it was like a big poker game. It was a lot of fun. So my first point to you is that, similar to what Chris said, everything you do right now is practice for what's going to happen in the future. Okay? So when I was 18 years old, I had good grades at school, and I thought, oh man, I want to go on Wall Street and be a trader, so I'm going to go get a fancy internship, and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to learn everything, and this will be like my practice for what I'm going to do. So I wrote 50 letters to 50 different banks. I can still remember the exact number was 50, and I forgot what the stamps cost, so I looked it up. It was 25 cents. So I mailed 50 envelopes out, and if you guys ever see like a blue metal box on the corner, that's U.S. Post Office. That's how we used to send letters out. So I sent out 50 letters. Remember, I had good grades, I'm a decent guy, whatever. 50 rejections. I got 50 rejection letters. I kept a bunch of them. So Goldman Sachs, Chase Manhattan, Chemical, nothing, 0 for 50. So what I did was I came back to Pontiac, and I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll take some classes at Illinois State for the summer, and I can transfer them to my school, and I'll go get a job in Bloomington, right? But being, like you guys, 18 or 19 years, maybe I was 18 years old at the time, I thought, okay, so I'll take classes, and then in the afternoon, I'll get my riz on, as you guys would say, by working as a shoe salesman, right? And where I wanted to work was Shoe Carnival. So I used to do, do you ever remember Key Club used to do this thing where you could shoot a layup, a free throw, and a half-court shot to win something here. So I used to do that like in the mid-'80s. I love that stuff. So my mom would drag me to Shoe Carnival sometimes, and I'd say, oh, there's a sale on pumps, in aisle 3. And everybody would go crazy. So I thought, okay, this is where I want to work. So I applied there, and they told me, okay, you're not Shoe Carnival material. So I was like, I was totally bummed out. So I ended up at Kitty Shoes, right, which is in the Eastland Mall. And I thought, okay, still, I'm 18 years old. I'll probably meet some girls. I'll make some friends. It's still fun to hang on. I didn't take it very seriously. It's just going to be a fun job for the summer. Okay. So I get there the first day, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be fun. And a person walks in. It could be any one of you. And I say, oh, hi, can I help you? I'm Greg. And they say, oh, no, I'm just browsing. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's cool. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, I hope somebody else will come in later, whatever. I got a tap on the shoulder, and my boss said, hey, Greg, what happened? Oh, that person's just browsing all about it. All right, Greg, get the blank out of here. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, the rules are, if you do not manage to sell to a person, you have to turn it over to somebody else. So if Chris was a salesman, I have to say, oh, you know what? I think Chris has an idea of what you want. Hey, Chris, can you help this person? So they had this rule called turning over, right? So they sent me home. So I worked 5 minutes my first day, came back the next day. So now I know what's going on. And at first I thought, okay, when you go into a shoe store, they ask you, someone says, I'm a size 6, can you give me these pumps, right? And then you go back and get the pumps, and that's easy. But that never happens, right? You never have the size, right? Or you never have the style. So as a shoe salesman, what do you have to do? Often we don't have your size, and probably a lot of you have this experience. So we've either got to put this machine in the shoe, expand the shoe. So if you're a 7, I'd take a 6.5 and stretch it and say, try this, this runs a little bigger, whatever. Or I would put a pad in the shoe and make it smaller, right? But you're competing against, and then you also have to figure out who is actually going to buy shoes, right? And then other things would happen too, and this is all very fast. Back in the old days, we all used to go to the mall. So there's so many customers, you have to turn over these people. You'd find ladies coming in with a piece of cloth, and then you'd run because that was a bridal party. And that was a sure sale. So I would see this, if I see Chris selling over here and he didn't see that woman, I would have this person pause and then run over and grab that woman. If there were kids there, that was usually a sure sale, except it would take a long time because everybody wants to make sure their kids, you're nice to them, whatever. And the last thing I'm going to say is, I hope it's not sexist, but men and women shop for shoes differently. I think in this day and age we can say this, right? So if I would see a man really looking at a pair of construction boots, I knew, okay, that's a sure thing. I would run over there and sell him the shoes. And I realized this was just like a big game, right? And the commissions were very small and whatever. So it got to a point where at Kinney Shoes, I was the number 2 shoe salesperson in the Midwestern region for 1 month, right? So I made an extra, probably $10 more than somebody else. But when I got to Wall Street, and I started to think about my experience having taken these fancy finance classes and modeling classes, there was nothing that helped me quite as much as that experience at Kinney Shoes that I didn't want in the first place because I wanted a fancy internship. Because I would have 4 phone calls at the same time. I'd have Central Bank of Brazil, I would have Morgan Stanley, I would have some hedge fund, all of them calling me to do something, $200 or $300 million of this or that. And me having to think, okay, no, is this guy really trying to buy or sell? Is he trying to trick me? Can I get him to do something else? And this is all. And when I tell this story to people on Wall Street, they're like, that's amazing. How could your little experience at Kinney Shoes have helped you so much in your career? And I think everybody here is going to find something that you're practicing now that is going to help you in the future. So I think of even the people in my class. Someone is head of agriculture at University of Illinois or whatever. She was always very interested in animal husbandry and like growing plants. My friend Paula Beyer, who Mrs. Willie also taught, was the best chemistry person here, right? So I quickly partnered with her, and she wanted to do all the labs. She wanted to do everything, and lo and behold, she gets a PhD in chemistry. She works at DuPont. My best friend in school was a guy named Steve Gale. My father was a surgeon. He used to hang out at my house and like beg my dad, show me the anatomy book, show this. And then when we were dissecting pigs and frogs, he'd be all over it. And everybody else would say, oh, that smells, whatever. He would be doing it. The guy's a trauma surgeon now. He's a very successful trauma surgeon. So there's going to be something within each of you that you can practice today. I mean, of course, have the good habits, golden rule. But I don't know what it is. Like, you could be good at puzzle solving, you could be good at helping people, you could be good at whatever, and you think that you don't have a chance to practice what you're doing in the future, but you do. And I've always thought that this Kinney shoe example, selling shoes at Kinney's, right? Everybody here knows Kinney's. Selling white foam to clean your white shoes and everything, that helped me almost as much as anything, in eventually trading, billions of dollars of debt. So I think I'm over time. I have one other lesson, but I think I don't have time. I can go? Okay. My second lesson to you is that knowledge is very accessible nowadays. So education, right? Everybody's, but if you just want to learn something, you can learn it on the, you guys have so much access to the internet, right? Access to the internet, access to boards, access to everything. You could learn what you want. It's the accreditation that's expensive now, which is, I think that's all going to change. But I knew that at an early age, that it's what you know, not who you are. And this was fortunately starting to change. So when I was on Wall Street, we had a very strict hierarchy, like the 40-year-old guys, the 30-year-old guys, the 20-year-old guys. And I knew that if I had the knowledge, I could make money, I could be successful. So when I eventually left college, I went to get a job on Wall Street, and I wanted to trade, like I told you, what I eventually ended up doing, but I couldn't get that job. And why? Because I was like too over-enthusiastic and friendly. So when I interviewed at all these banks, they're like, oh yeah, the traders, those are like rough and tumble, athletic guys, spreadsheets, for 80 hours and whatever. And Chris knows what I'm talking about. Like perfect investment banking analyst. So I could only get a job doing that, which is fine. I got that job. And then I eventually just scheming my way to get on the trading floor. And always trying to get as much knowledge, as I could. So eventually I got down there, and I'm the junior to the junior basically just answering the phone and getting coffee for people and not really getting an opportunity to do anything. But the whole time I was studying, so there was this thing called a Bloomberg terminal. And I would press the help function there, and I would just read all, and I would just study and study and study. And this is what, and I started realizing is, what you have to do is you have to act as if, right? You have to act as if you can do the job. So, has anyone in here ever seen Dazed and Confused? The movie, okay. So Mitch Kramer is the kid, and you guys don't know this movie? All right, with Matthew McConaughey. So Mitch Kramer, he wants to buy beer, so he starts to imitate Matthew McConaughey, right? And he starts saying things like, oh, working for the city, keeping money in my pocket, and he manages to buy beer when he's 14 years old. That was me on Wall Street when I was 23, is I would get memos from people, I would start listening to people, I would I still didn't really have an opportunity. Until one day they said, you could be the assistant to the trader in Hong Kong. I said, oh, okay, that'll be great. I'll only be 5 years away from where I want to be. But then one day, so this is like sports free agency, our London trader left. So the Hong Kong trader had to go to London. Now we have to fill in the Hong Kong spot, which should be a guy who's like 30, but it was just me, right? So it was almost as if the scrubbiest of the scrubs got put in the big position. So I sat there, but having been able to imitate, right, and listening to what people are saying, like, oh, the market is toppy, the shorts are getting run off the table, I managed to succeed a little bit. But they were always looking to, hire somebody else, like get a free agent, okay? And so one day the Mexican peso collapsed. And that day, the Philippines should have also, anyway, in any case, I put on a big trade, and it should not have worked out. Just a huge short. I started calling around the market because the bonds were rallying and people were saying, oh yeah, someone's getting killed here. The guy was me. And like, oh yeah, I don't know who that is. I went over to another trader, a guy named Chen, and I said, Chen, do you have cigarettes? And he said, yeah, but I thought you don't smoke. I said, I don't smoke. So I got the cigarettes, and I don't know how to smoke, but I went onto this bridge, which was by Citibank at the time. I started smoking these cigarettes because I knew I had ruined my career, I was going to be fired. But then 12 hours later, everything turned around and I was a made man. And this was when I was 20, and this was only because I knew that knowledge was the most important thing. If you have access to acting as if you have access to what other people have, then you can succeed very quickly. And I think all of you have even more of that opportunity with the way the internet is, technology, et cetera. So those are my 2 things to you, okay? Practice right now. You guys can all practice something that is going to make you successful in the future. And number 2 is acquire knowledge, and it's so easy to acquire knowledge. Don't be lazy and just go and do it. So anyway, thank you. I hope it takes.
Our next award recipient, their grandson who nominated them was not able to be here today, and so I will speak about them. Their name is Mr. John Rodino. He graduated PTHS in 1941, and the #1 song that year was the Chattanooga Choo Choo by the Glenn Miller Orchestra. John was born on August 19, 1923 in Pontiac, Illinois. He graduated from Illinois Wesleyan University, where he was on the football team. John served our country in the U.S. Army. He spent 27 months in combat during World War II. He was recognized with the Bronze Star, the French Croix de Guerre, Presidential Unit Citation with Palm, 4 Overseas Service Bars, the European, African, Middle Eastern Theater Ribbon, and the Good Conduct Medal. The Distinguished Unit Badge, the 45 Bronze Arrowhead, and a World War II Victory Medal. John taught physical education at St. Mary's School for 2 years before teaching at Pontiac District 429. From 1950 to 1978, he coached basketball and track. He also served as the athletic director and vice principal at Pontiac Junior High School. He was an active member of St. Mary's Catholic Church, a member of the Lions Club, the VFW, and the 15th Infantry Regiment Association. He volunteered as a timer for track meets and was a scorekeeper for the Pontiac Holiday Tournament. Lastly, John was part of the inaugural class of 6 Pontiac High School athletes to be inducted to the Pontiac Tribe of Indians. John passed away on October 22, 2008. Let's give Mr. Rodino his memory and his family a round of applause. Our next award recipient today is Colonel Timothy Schaefer. He graduated Pontiac in 1991, and another top song from that year was Motown Philly by Boyz II Men. Tim Schaefer graduated from PTHS in 1991. He attended Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, where he joined the Army ROTC program. What he found was a calling that has kept him busy for 32 years. He commissioned as a second lieutenant in 1995 and has served all over the world, including 3 combat tours. He commanded at all levels up through the battalion command and had the privilege of leading a battalion in combat. He served in numerous senior level staff assignments, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His last 5 years have been spent in Europe, where he was involved in Army operations across all of Europe and Africa. Tim is currently a colonel and serving as the Deputy Commander for Joint Force Component Command, Integrated Missile Defense, where he is responsible for coordinating global missile defense operations. In addition to his degree from SIUC, he holds master's degrees from the University of Maine and the National Defense University. Married to Patty, named Hyatt, also a PTHS class of 1991 graduate. They have enjoyed traveling the world and serving one of our nation's most prestigious resources, our soldiers and families who serve. Let's welcome Colonel Timothy Schaefer to the stage.
Good afternoon, and it is a pleasure to be back in this auditorium that I spent so much time in when I was a student here. First, I'm going to start with some thank yous. To Laura, who's here today, that nominated me for this without me knowing it. But more importantly, as Chris mentioned earlier, small towns are small towns. And just to show the ties of how small Pontiac really is, but what an impact. Chris Kutzer, classmate. I was a catcher. He was one of the pitchers of the ball team. Sally, his wife, classmate. Greg was a few years ahead of me. Mr. Radino, who we just heard about, next door neighbor. We worked together at Don's Red Fox. Chris was also there. Mrs. Willie, who we'll hear from, Cub Scout leader for me. I worked with her son, who was also Chris and my classmate. You see where I'm going here. It's a family business. Pontiac is special. So, Chris mentioned it earlier. I have traveled, counted them today, 48 nations, countries that I have visited over the last 30 years. I've lived in 7 different countries. I've lived in 14 states in the United States. This is home, and it will always be home. We had our own social media back in the days that we were growing up. It was people like Mrs. Willie, Mr. Radino, the entire town, because you got away with nothing. No matter what you did, somebody that knew your mother saw it, and before you got home and the street lights went on, she was waiting for you. Good or bad, that's how it worked. So be proud and take advantage of being in Pontiac. As Chris said, it's not perfect, but I will tell you it's as good as anywhere out there. And so enjoy your time here at PTHS and in Pontiac. I made a bunch of notes, but I didn't prepare straight remarks, mostly because I knew I'd be behind Chris and Greg, and they're far smarter than I am. And so I want to be able to take out everything. I didn't want to repeat it. So I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts as I go through here for things that I've done. And I'm going to start with this. I was not the best student at Pontiac Township High School. I was not a starter on the baseball team. I was a backup. Did band, I did chorus, I spent a lot of time on this stage. I was a mediocre student at best. I got my only F in a class here at Pontiac Township High School. And that teacher happens to be in the room today. She may or may not remember giving me that F, but most importantly, she gave me a second chance. And she gave me an opportunity to do better the next semester and maybe make that grade not as bad as it was. That was something that was pretty important to me at that time, was getting a second chance. Because it made me realize I need to work a little bit harder or I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to skip through a bunch of these note cards because they're not as important. Here's the advice piece that I'm going to talk you through. And take these for what it's worth. I will tell you, I racked my brain for the last couple of weeks. What was a speaker that stood up here when I was either up there as a freshman, if I get this right, over here as a sophomore, over here as a junior, or here as a senior who really wanted to be somewhere other than sitting in the auditorium listening? And I struggled to think of a single person that I could remember what they said. So we're not going to take it personal. Chart your own course. Okay? You've heard from Greg, Chris, and I. We all kind of follow the same model. We went to college. We got jobs. We started families. That's kind of how we did things back then. That was a path that we got put on. That may not be the right path for you. College might be what you need to go do. Going to the military might be what you need to do. Go to a trade school. taking some time off, finding a job right away and starting a family. You've got to figure out what that right path is for you. Because if you get on the wrong path, it's going to take you a while to get to the right one. So don't let somebody force you into a box. Find your passion. Greg talked about it. Each of you, there's something in your life right now that you really enjoy. That may be what takes you the rest of your life, it may not, but search for it. Try different experiences. Get out of your comfort zone and find something that really you are passionate about. Because what you'll find, I think any one of us up here will tell you the same thing. If you are working in something that you're passionate about, it's not really work. For me, it's grown to be taking care of soldiers and families and leading. That's what I've become passionate about. And there's been bad days. Joseph talked about it. I've had some really bad days. 3 combat tours, you don't always have good days. But if you're passionate about what you do and you're committed to what you do, it matters and it'll get you through anything. Now, this one's going to even trouble with the teachers. Don't be afraid to fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. And you're not trying things that are difficult. If you are always successful, push yourself harder. And that's whether it's here in school, do it when you have the opportunity, when it's not going to be, costing somebody their life, having a massive crash on Wall Street. I can't even imagine the stress that went with Greg and stuff like that. But do it when you have the chance. School is your opportunity to try something new and maybe not be as successful as you wanted to be, because that's when you're going to learn the most when you fail. Passion to learn. That's been talked about already, but lifelong learning is important. If you are not the best student right now, it's okay. Find your passion, what you want to learn, and keep getting better at everything that you do. You never stop. Bad news. I thought when I got through with high school, I was done. Then I got done with my first college degree, I thought I was done. And then my second college degree, and then my third college degree. And even now, I have no interest going back to school again, but you still learn every day. Pick up a book, listen to a blog, listen to a podcast. However you learn, keep learning and build that desire inside of you to always get better. This one is really important to me, particularly because of my line of work, but it's resiliency. The world sucks. It is hard, it is unforgiving, and there are people that are going to be out there that are just going to try to make you unhappy. There are situations that are going to pop up that are just damn hard. Your resiliency matters. How you react in the face of adversity is what is going to define you as a person. And you're all going to have it. And you've got to decide where you are today. And you know this about yourself. If you're faced with the hardest thing you can imagine right now, how are you going to react? You going to fold? Or are you going to stand up and figure out how to solve the problem and get through it? And resiliency is not something that you're naturally born with. It's built throughout your life experiences. It's built by having a good support network around you, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's how you approach problems. So work on your resiliency. If you struggle right now and things don't go your way, you got to work on it. Because you're all going to face problems. You're going to lose jobs. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose family. You're going to fail spectacularly sometimes. And how you react in those bad situations is what's going to define you as a person. Be adaptable. The world changes faster than you can imagine. Actually, you can probably imagine it. But I was thinking through some of the conversations with Greg and Chris and others earlier. When I started school at Pontiac Township High School, we didn't have cell phones. I took a typing class in 1988 at that point. Still just typewriters. Today, everything's computerized. More computing power in this phone, which is going off, telling me my 8 minutes are up, right now than probably we had in this entire town for sure back when I was a student. Be adaptable, grow to technology, grow to new experiences, and grow to new problems and challenges. Be humble, and this one got touched upon. Arrogant people aren't who you want to be around. You want to be around people that are humble, people that serve. Find a way to serve your community, find a way to serve your country, find a way to serve your family. Maybe in uniform, it may be as a police officer, a firefighter, a paramedic, it may be just at your local church, it may be volunteering. Find a way to give back to those that have given you so much. And here's the last thing I'm going to talk about, and I'll get off the stage. 28 years now of active duty service, 32 years of wearing this uniform. But I think it applies to every one of us. I think every one of the folks that'll be up here today will echo it. It's about relationships. Being successful in your life is about relationships. The people that are sitting around you right now, you're all probably sitting in your group of friends. Those relationships will matter for the rest of your life. The relationships you will build in college or in trade school or whatever you do next will serve you for the rest of your life. And the relationships that you build will serve you for the rest of your life. They can sometimes make or break the difference between your success. We hold very little of our own success in our own hands. We are successful because of those that support us, my family, my wife's family who is here with me today, the folks that support you from hometown, friends that I'm still in touch with, the people that I have met across the world as I've done this job. 2 years ago, matter of fact, 2 years ago right now, we're in the middle of the largest non-combatant evacuation from Afghanistan, from the world has ever seen out of Afghanistan. As we moved almost 200,000 Afghan allies from Kabul to other places in the world as the country started to fall. I'm going to tell one little story. I'll be quick, Joseph, I promise. I had a classmate from National War College when I got my master's degree from National Defense University that was an Afghan officer. And at that point in time, he was fighting the withdrawal action, trying to hold the Taliban back from Kabul until it fell apart. He was a known man by the Taliban because he'd been fighting the Taliban almost his entire life. And they were hunting for him to kill him. I'm not exaggerating, they were hunting for him at that point in time. So our classmates got together at about 3 a.m. Germany time when we realized where this was going to figure out how to get him and his family out of Afghanistan. We were successful. And the only reason we were successful is because I was in Germany in the position that I was in. One of our classmates was in Kabul running the evacuation on the ground. 2 State Department colleagues back in DC at the State Department headquarters. A Navy SEAL classmate in Africa of all places, but talking to his special operations friends on the ground. And between that circle, that night we were able to get my classmate and 6 of his family members on a C-17 aircraft out of Afghanistan. They now reside safely in Washington, D.C. That's nothing about me, but what that I'm trying to show is the power of relationships. Had the 6 of us not come together that night, I'm 100% positive my friend would be dead, along with many Afghans that we lost in that time, and his family probably with him. But it came down to those relationships that mattered at the time to get that thing done. So continue to take advantage of that, build your relationships here, and go from there. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. It's really good to be back in Pontiac. Again, this is always home, no matter where I've gone, and thank you for your time.
Our next award recipient today is Miss Verge Tem. She graduated PTHS in 1971, and the #1 song that year was Joy to the World by Three Dog Night. Verge graduated from PTHS, like I said, in 1971. She's been a lifelong advocate for an example of women in traditionally male vocations. At high school, she was the first girl to take a wood shop in welding since World War II. She became a residential designer and later graduated with a master's degree in architecture from the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. In graduate school, she led a national study for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to develop a historical context of the missile and radar development of Cold War and wrote For Want of Home, a History of Military Family Housing. As a practicing architect, she focused on environmentally sustainable design and construction, creating some of the most energy-efficient homes and buildings in Wisconsin. She later became one of the first female general contractors in Wisconsin, building the homes she designed. She co-authored the article Leading the Way, Domestic Architecture for the Future, and earned national recognition as a leader in sustainable design through her efforts in teaching, writing, and mentoring about environmentally sound design. Let's welcome her to the stage.
Well, Joseph just said it all, so thank you. No, I have to say, Tim was a tough act to follow. So what I'm going to pretend is that it is 1970. I'm about to start my senior year, and I have just listened and absorbed everything that he has said. And now I'm going to give you a case study of how that played out. So I've been an architect for the past 35 years. My love for architecture had its roots in a couple little buildings just 2 blocks south here. It was my dad's wood shop. When I was a little girl, I spent a lot of time down there hanging out with my dad and just scavenging pieces of wood to make, little forts and rafts and things. But sadly, my dad died when I was 11, and I was left without much of a support group. So by the time I got to high school, I developed 2 real challenges. First of all, I was a girl in love with a male-dominated profession. And second of all, I had developed a pretty bad anxiety disorder, so it made me difficult to connect with other people. But I had 2 great teachers who helped me navigate through all that, Mr. Dale Dungan and Mr. Ralph Ardini. Mr. Dungan was our band director, and he helped me, perhaps more than anyone else, develop the grit that I would need as a woman eventually entering the male-dominated field of architecture. In high school, I was a drummer, and because of Mr. Dungan, I not only had a safe place to retreat to when I was having anxiety attacks, the band room was awesome, but I eventually evolved into one of the top high school percussionists in the entire state of Illinois. Mr. Dungan would never let me give up. When I thought a challenge was too hard, he just forced me to power through, and he made me realize I could overcome anything I set my mind to. Mr. Ardini was the shop teacher who taught me welding, and when I was in high school, girls weren't allowed to take shop. We were considered dangerous or a distraction in the shops because our school had a dress code which prohibited girls from wearing anything other than skirts or dresses. But I wanted to weld steel art sculptures. So Mr. Ardini volunteered to teach me welding after school when I could go and change into my jeans. At the end of my junior year, Mr. Ardini and the other shop teachers petitioned the school to drop the dress code and finally allow girls to take shop. So in my senior year, I was the very first girl at this high school to ever be allowed to take shop since World War II. And I am tickled to pieces that you have a female welding teacher now. I am so proud of this school. But the year after my senior year, 2 more girls took shop, and that taught me some important lessons, that even if you have an atypical request, go ahead and ask it, because you just never know what the results are going to be. And I also learned that allies and mentors can be powerful advocates on your behalf. After I graduated from high school, I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. The school counselor at that time had given me 3 career options: be a nurse, or a teacher, or a secretary. That's what was offered to girls in 1970. And those are all good vocations, but they didn't suit me. They just didn't fit. So I went to college and I changed my major several times, and I tried out a lot of different interests, but I had to find work. So I took some state-supported classes and I became a secretary. But little did I know that that would lead me to my ultimate calling. I'd worked my way up to administrative assistant to the plant manager, and I became liaison between him and the architect that we'd hired to do a big remodeling of our plant. The architect noticed that I had some natural design skills, and he persuaded me to take his classes, night classes at Illinois State. And pretty soon he started sending me some small design projects, but I became quickly aware that if I didn't know drafting, I couldn't do the work. So at that time I was a single mom. I worked full time, and I couldn't find any drafting classes that fit my schedule. So
I reached out to Mr. Ardini for his advice. I told him what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an architect. I needed to learn drafting. Mr. Ardini said, well, you know, I'll teach you. So he gave me four-hour classes at night over a 4-week period. And with that knowledge, I landed a job as a designer for a construction firm down in Bloomington. But about a year or so into that job, I realized that, you know, I really needed to know a lot more about architecture if I was going to be a good designer. So I went back to school, took a deep dive into the field of sustainable architecture, won a few design awards, and graduated with my master's degree in architecture 6 years later from the U of I. Now, to become a licensed architect, you need to complete an internship. So for the next 2 years, I interned at 2 different firms, neither of which were very accepting of women. We were reminded daily, almost daily, that they thought women had no business on a construction site, or that we couldn't possibly understand the nuances of design and structure. It was kind of tough, and it still is to some degree. To put things in context, when I graduated, women comprised only 11% of architects in the nation. Today, we're up to 17%, so it's gotten a little better, but we do have a long way to go. So I left, I opened my own firm. I became one of the only female architects in Wisconsin outside of Madison and Milwaukee. And I became one of the only architects in the entire state to focus on sustainable design. So I guess I was kind of an oddball, but I was really passionate about creating better buildings for the world. I started writing a twice-monthly column for the local newspaper about sustainable design, and I hosted tours of my homes when they were under construction to help people understand how energy-efficient homes were created. And I continued my own education, striving to create ever more highly sustainable buildings. I came to realize pretty soon that architects and builders have different sets of knowledge. We didn't talk the same language. And I wanted to understand both worlds. So I eventually became a general contractor, one of only 3 female general contractors in the state of Wisconsin at the time. I started managing the construction of my designs, and by doing that, I learned more than I ever thought possible. I've now created over 15 of the most energy-efficient houses ever recorded in the state of Wisconsin, and 3 of the highest rated in the entire nation. 5 years ago, I received the Women in Sustainability Leadership Award, which highlights some of the most influential women in North America. Several of my projects have been published in national magazines, and a few years ago, I was asked to co-author a book called Leading the Way about high-performance homes. You can get it on Amazon. Just go there, buy it. My publisher will be happy. So I recently retired, but I continue to do environmental research and to mentor young architects entering the field. And I'm very happy to say that I'm currently mentoring just a brilliant young architect who is about to become another of Wisconsin's female general contractors. So I'm here today at my old high school, which is kind of bizarre and wonderful. But I'm wondering if there are any pearls of wisdom that I can share with you that I have learned along the way to help you navigate the waters of high school and the years beyond. And this has been said before. First of all, never be afraid to ask for help. To ask someone for their help shows that you respect their wisdom, their skills, their knowledge. Your teachers, your parents, or other mentors you find along the way will be honored to help you. Trust me on that. Second, you need to become your own best advocates. Never let anyone else write your story for you. You may know exactly what you want to do right out of high school, but it may take you a long time to figure out what your calling is. But you will know your true calling when you hear it. It's the one that is good and beneficial and elevates you and the world around you. But my motivation today to participate in this distinguished alumni event was really to express my thanks to the teachers here. I know there are many teachers who genuinely care about their students, who are able to devote enough time to influence a student's path in a very positive direction. Mr. Dungan and Mr. Ardini were those two for me, and I am deeply grateful for all they did. And I'm really happy to be here, and I thank you for including me in this.
Our seventh and last award recipient today is Mrs. Katie Willey. She graduated in 1961, and the #1 song that year was I Fall to Pieces by Patsy Cline. Mrs. Willies is the daughter of John and Catherine Vickers. She graduated from St. Mary's School in 1957, from PTHS in 1961, and earned her BA from Rosary College in 1965. Served in the Peace Corps from 1965 to 1967 in Venezuela, and earned her Master of Science in Education in 1971 from Illinois State University. Katie began her teaching career of 43 years at St. Mary's School, teaching junior high students from 1968 to 1979, and from 1982 until her retirement in 2012. She also taught at Odell High School from 1979 through 1982 and was an adjunct faculty member at Heartland Community College from 1992 to 2008. As a teacher, she was involved in coaching math and speech teams, as well as keeping up to date with curriculum and best teaching practices. Awards she received include the Paramar Cat Award in 2003 and the Bishop Schlarman Award in 2012 for dedicated service to the Diocese of Peoria, and the Pontiac Kiwanis Club Educator of the Year Award in 2010. In retirement, Katie is involved in volunteering at St. Mary's School, Women's Guild, Bereavement Nursing Home and Homebound Ministries, the Liturgy Committee, and the Building Committee for St. Mary's Church, as well as being a docent for the Jones House in Pontiac. Katie married John Willey in 1972 and have raised 6 children: John, Bridget, Mike, Tom, Kate, and Maureen. Let's all welcome Mrs. Willey to the stage.
Congratulations to all the new PTHS Distinguished Alumni for 2023. I'm honored to be included with you today and very proud of you two who were my former students, Greg and Chris. Mr. Kilgore, Mr. Baum, teachers, staff, and students. This school and the community of Pontiac have played a big part in my life. My parents, my 6 siblings, and my 6 children are graduates of Pontiac Township High School. I taught in this community for 43 years, and since my retirement, my children think I'm busier now than I ever have been as I continue to volunteer and help in the community. I was a 1961 graduate from PTHS at a time when very few students drove to school, girls had no interscholastic sports, when many students went home for lunch, and when we had no cell phones, internet, or AI. I was a senior in January 1961 when I heard our new president, John F. Kennedy, say in his inaugural address, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." These words sparked something positive in me and inspired me to make it a mission in my life to help others and make a positive difference in the lives of people each day of my life. After graduating from Rosary College, now Dominican University, in 1965, I joined the Peace Corps, an organization formed by President Kennedy and whose mission was to eradicate poverty, illiteracy, and disease in third world countries. From 1965 to 1967, I served in a tiny Venezuelan town in the Andes Mountains, where I taught in a small school, teaching children and adults English. I realized that I liked the work and felt successful. I was proud of the students as they displayed their knowledge and used it in the real world. I felt like I had contributed to their lives, which was a good feeling. After completing the mission in Venezuela, I was motivated to continue down the path of service for others, so I applied for a teaching position at St. Mary's and was hired. Even though I had my degree in college in economics, I had to take classes to become a certified teacher. My first 3 years of teaching, I taught during the day and was a student at night at Illinois State University. No online classes at that time. I taught for 43 years and did not look at my work as a job, but rather as something I truly enjoyed. It was a wonderful feeling helping students put hard work into something, into understanding something, and the satisfaction they had when they were able to understand, apply it, and use it in their lives. As students, you are all at various levels of decision-making about your future. I never planned to be a teacher. Life throws a lot at you throughout your lives. Be open to new ideas, new ways of thinking, always be learning, and above all, try to make a difference in the lives of other people each day. Not only will you be making a positive impact on others, but you will find that service to others will make you feel better about your own life and the direction you are headed. 2 ideas I tried to instill in my students were to choose the friends you want to be like and not be afraid to make a mistake. Your friends make you a person you become. I heard a psychologist say last week that each person is influenced by the 5 people they are around the most: your friends, your family, your teachers. Choose wisely the ones you want to be like. As far as mistakes, you can learn from them if you correct them. Often we learn the most when we fail and make a mistake. As a math teacher, I witnessed some students learning more from a mistake that they corrected than they did from a correct answer that they really didn't understand. We learn from our mistakes, and you should not be afraid to fail, as oftentimes it is in these moments that you find out more about yourself and your capabilities than by staying in your comfort zone. You said that. So, after my retirement from teaching 11 years ago, I found areas of service where help was needed. I worked with the evaluation for the recertification at St. Mary's School. I visited homebound parishioners, took Holy Communion to them and to the nursing home residents, volunteered at Hope Pregnancy Center, and at the Jones House, the oldest home in Pontiac. I want to shout out to some of my former students who work here at PTHS. Mr. Blair, Mr. Casson, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Kurth, Ms. Jacobs, Mrs. Daly, Mrs. Vanass, Mr. Hayner, Mr. Tibbs, Mr. Fogarty, and Mrs. Kilgus. I am very proud that you have chosen a field of service to help young people gain confidence in themselves and grow in the knowledge they need to further their education for life. I hope you all can find the supportive colleagues in your future work that I have found in mine. I was so lucky to be surrounded and influenced by people I could talk to, get ideas from, laugh with, and who inspired me to do my best. Mr. Yaps was one of the principals I worked under, and he was always a valued friend. I hope you all have a good school year, in the classroom and in your extracurricular activities, and grow with the knowledge you learn from others. Again, I want to thank you for this recognition. When I became a teacher, my intent was not to win awards, have articles written about me, or get my picture in the paper. It has always been with the intention of serving others and doing my best to make the school and the community a better place for all. I have found joy in serving others and hope all of you can find joy in your life the way I have in mine. Steph Curry said we all have something to offer the world. We just must find what it is. I found mine in the Peace Corps and in teaching. Where will you find yours? It might be in an unexpected place, but follow your passions and dreams to become the best you can be. Thank you.
Let's all stand and thank all of these award recipients today for their words of wisdom. Go ahead and have a seat. Again, thank you, students, for listening so diligently to this. At this point, you are to go to your 6th-hour class, is that correct? So please, we're going to go and dismiss the seniors first to your 6th-hour class. Freshmen. Sophomores. Juniors, if you could go through that door right over there, half of you there and half of you here, I think that would work.